You should.
It's like no.
Okay, so let's get started. It's my last lecture, and you have 2 more to go. I have quite a few things to cover, so let me walk you through what I talk about today. So if you remember from the beginning, I've discussed with you several times now the mechanism of auditory system. So today I'm going to try to use some of this knowledge, put together, tell you one story about application engineers have made, taking advantage of auditory system, and made something that's really remarkable for the human being, and that's important. So, sorry. So today we're going to talk about cochlear implant, and as you will see that I will touch upon literally most of the things we've learned auditory system for you to appreciate it. What can basic science to do? Understanding of the basic science help with translation. And many of you are engineers and should be familiar with this. So I'll run through here and try to give you a few minutes. So now, since this is my last lecture of the auditory system, I want to emphasize this, a point I made earlier. What are important problems for the auditory system that I believe I brought up at the beginning of my lecture? This system allows us to communicate in speech and the language, and allow us to appreciate the music, understand the singing and the poetry, the mechanism behind it, see the brain. And now today we're going to focus on what can this system do for us to understand how you can cure or improve the condition of deafness and other things involve tinnitus, stuttering, schizophrenia, autism. Now I hope some of you down the road will continue to study the brain, and maybe some of you will study auditory system, and some will become physicians eventually treat these disorders. So bear that in mind. Now today we're going to talk about something called cochlear implant. Why we want to deal with the cochlear implant and the problem of audition, the dysfunction, the disease. We mentioned it previously, but here are some numbers for you to appreciate how important this system is. So hearing loss affects approximately 17 out of 1,000 children under age 18 in the US. This is data a couple of years ago. It's very significant. And almost 2 out of 3 of every 1,000 children in the US are born deaf or hard of hearing due to genetic disposition or disease. Now these numbers cover a little larger than the rest of the world, particularly in European countries. So hearing loss in children is a major issue. Now, why this is not just an issue of a hearing loss? Okay, if you lose hearing, a profound consequence of deafness in childhood is the inability to communicate with the speech, which often results in delayed language learning and the intellectual development, and the consequences problem in school. Now, I'm sure that some of you may have experience with your friends since young who have hearing problems. The thing we want to emphasize as a scientist and also as clinicians that your problem in hearing does not stop at a year. It affects the rest of your life. Because if you cannot hear clearly, you won't be able to communicate effectively. Therefore, you won't do as well as you should be at the school. And if you feel school don't succeed as well as other people with normal hearing, the rest of your intellectual development and your career will be severely affected. So this is a major problem that we want to correct early on, as early as possible. Now, cochlear implant, which we'll discuss today in great detail, is the most successful neural prosthesis device that has restored hearing in large number of children and adults worldwide. We're talking about hundreds of thousands and millions of people. Now, you must have read many science fictions, watch movies, talk about avatars, talk about all kinds of things. I'll tell you, the most successful device that in daily use is cochlear implant. Retina implant, other things are far behind, 20, 30 years behind. So today we're going to appreciate what makes cochlear implant work and what are the problems that are still existing in this device. Okay? So what is a cochlear implant? A cochlear implant is a surgically implanted electronic device that provides a sense of sound to a person who is profoundly deaf or severely hard of hearing. And this is also called bionic ear. So the development, the idea of using electricity to restore hearing goes back half a century ago, or maybe longer, by this gentleman, Mr. Volta. This is an Italian physicist, chemistry, who actually first time tried this idea that put two wires in the ear, pass some current, and generate the sensation of hearing. Okay. Now, these days, it may not be so surprising to you as a biomedical engineer. Electrode stimulate somewhere in the nervous system, you can generate the sensation. Half a century ago, it's never heard about. So this is the initial tenant. Now, the electrode stimulate our ear, and of course, as we know, it's not really ear as we know from outside. It's nerve only, not can cause the sensation of sound. Okay. So how does cochlear implant work? Today, so I'm going to walk you through. So you may notice I speak a little bit faster than normal because I have no more lecture left. So I'm going to walk you through all the mechanism, component, and go through some of the details, and then you can understand the rest from the knowledge you have so far. So here's how it works. Here's the anatomy of the ear, as if you're looking from somewhere from front to the right ear. And here's the eardrum, all the bone, all structure we discussed in the earlier lecture. Implant here, and electrically insert into the cochlear, which is spinal, and with the earphone device here, which we're going to talk about next slide. Okay, so you have several pieces. You have one that outside as a speech processor and a microphone. Then you transduce the signal through the interface inside the ear, and then from there you generate into current into here. So this is what a cochlear implant. This is a commercially available cochlear implant. Costs about $20,000 a piece. Now there are 3 companies in the world that make this, and for most hospitals. So how does this work? The reason cochlear implant work is because cochlear is tonotopic organized, which we discussed in my first lecture of auditory system. And this is a slide you've seen before. If you expand that cochlear here, like this, and there's a basal membrane here that vibrate depends on the frequency of sound, with the highest vibration here caused and a tip called apex, caused by low frequency and caused by high frequency, and organized nicely. This is the key to the success of a cochlear implant, because we all know when you look at sound such as speech and music, if you done Fourier analysis, it's all laid out by frequency, from low frequency to high frequency. Because the cochlear is frequency organized, we call it tonotopic organization. Then you can map that frequency of sound into here, therefore let people to generate the hearing that correspond to the frequency of sound. This is really what is made cochlear work. And this is also the reason why the implant of a retina is more difficult, because the retina, as you've learned from Dr. Connor's lectures, are very complex, two-dimensional sheets. And our visual image has many dimensions. So it's not one-to-one. You have match, color, curvature, all of that onto here. And how do you stimulate here? So this is the major problem with the retina implant. That's why it's so difficult. Nicely, cochlear is very simple. Simple in a way that is organized by frequency. Therefore, we know as engineers that you can take sound, do a Fourier transform, you can match that. This is the beginning. Second is that because the cochlear is a bony structure, so it's easy, relatively easy to insert an electrode there that will stay there stably. Whereas the retina is soft tissue. If you implant electrode behind the retina, how to fix this? How to prevent that from moving around? All of those are issues. Whereas a bony structure within the cochlear provide a very stable housing environment for electrode to sit in there. This is what has been done. Now, let me walk you through the major steps to make cochlear implant work. This is probably one of the most important slides we're going to discuss today. So here are the working procedures for cochlear implant.
And I number them from 1 to 7. Now, the handout I gave it to you, I did not polish, so I'll give another copy. So it's essentially all the contents here, but I made it a little nicer since I sent you out to make it more interpretable. So here's the steps that takes to make a cochlear implant work. Step 1 is a microphone or pick up sound. So in a ear, a person who wears cochlear implant, outside the skin, there's a microphone. Okay, just someone hanging here. That microphone pick up sound. Then audio signal is processed by speech processor and transduced into pulse train. So the speech processor normally wear by someone on here, okay, or on a pocket. And then there's a cable that runs from outside into ear. Now, these days with electronic refinement, people can begin to put a processor right next to ear. But most time, like a Walkman, there's a microphone here. Okay, so that's what I'm showing here. This is what's speech processor. Sound coming here, and it's filtered into multiple bypass signals. Each of them will take into consideration of carrier and envelope extracted, so you have X number of channels. So this processor feeds the signal into this earpiece. Earpiece take a phone, takes the acoustic sound, send to the processor send it back to signal. The third step is that this processor generates pulses. We'll discuss in a moment what does the pulses mean. This electrical pulses is sent to the receiver embedded under the skin through the coil. So there's a coil behind the skin. Now, here's where you understand as a physicists or engineers now. Skin and has a transducer outside. We want to send the signal inside, but we really don't want to have a wire poaching through the skin. These people are going to take this every day. When they are users, take out, they're going to go to a shower, so far, so on. How do we generate this? You probably know answer all the way. 1 year, I had a graduate student interview for a program. So I give that question and say, how would you do this? And he failed to answer my question. I wasn't too impressed. How do you do this? How would you do it? How would you transmit that signal from outside to inside without a wire? Electromagnetic coupling, right? This is in your physics. So that's how you do. So there's no wire. You take the pulses here and transmit it into here. Now you have here. Then there's current source here. That pulse signal drive current sources into here. That is the fourth step. Receiver send the electrical pulses trained to electrode array, and that's shown here. Each of these is a spot we call electrode exposure. It touch end of the skin nerve, okay, which we talked about earlier. So the step 5 here is that electrical stimulation of outer nerve, because outer nerve ending, which we're going to see in the next couple of slides here, the electrode here, direct apply current here, excited here. Okay, now in the cochlear implant patients, normally they lost hear so. And we discussed earlier, in a normal hearing situation, if you lose hear so, you lose hearing. Here, so is gone. The outer nerve endings here, electrical stimulate outer nerve generate action potential. That's the next step. Outer nerve being activated, and the information is projected to higher outer pathway in the form of action potential. From here, everything going here, as we discussed action potential, all the way going to brain, and this is brain, and then we discussed some of details earlier. So the last step is the outer system code the signals, and the brain interpret both signals with produce addition. Okay, this is how cochlear implant work. Is that clear? Okay, if not clear, I highly recommend you to go back and review this step. I'd like you understand all of this, and this is really just combination of basic signal processing and the knowledge of outer system we have discussed. So then let's move on. So in the last 50 years, maybe more so, maybe more than 50 years, 70 years, cochlear implant as a device has been progressively getting better and better. So here show you the timeline. We talk about in 1800, this Italian scientist the first got a hands on a cochlear implant, and you can see here. So research development really took off in the 50s, 60s by engineers and physicians together. So those are the engineers we call today a biomedical engineer. So this is the best example of a biomedical engineer apply a device into medicine and a clinic. So commercialization, actually it was only about 30 years. Okay, it's very close. It's only about 80s FDA approved this. And here a plot to show you how many number of units being implanted every year now. Since you see 80, in 1980s, FDA approved it, so began to take off exponentially. Now about 2 years ago, we have about 30,000. This is in one company, and this is how much it costs. This is Australian dollars. You multiply it by 0.75. So right now it costs about $30,000 per device. It's like middle-sized car, okay, but it gives you hearing, okay. Now physicians are putting this in the ear of children and adults every day. If you go to our hospital here, they operate this almost every day to put it in. And you can find this in almost all the major hospitals in this country, in China, in India, in all the countries. This become standard clinical tool. Now most insurance companies pay for it. They pay for 1 year. We'll get to that. They actually don't pay for 2 years. That's one point that was very interesting to get out. So if you are deaf, children and most insurance company will pay for you to get 1 year. Okay. Now, why this is so significant? So if you look at the individuals who are profoundly deaf, or severely hard of hearing, this is what a hearing look like. This is the audiogram we talked about earlier, with the threshold of sound and frequency here. And what you can see here, now this is the reverse, upside down from the plot I showed you earlier. So for people in this category, the hearing threshold is pretty high. This is 80, 90, 100 dB. How loud is here? This is like a gunshot next to your ear. So they are literally have nothing left. Okay, and what is the hearing range of all of us in this room? You are somewhere here. Okay, so we're talking about 56 dB. So cochlear implant allow people in this range to move back to this range so they can have a conversation. Okay, now some of them completely deaf, congenitally deaf children, this doesn't. This is in a case where you have. Now this is another way showing us you are familiar by now that is, within the cochlear you have 1 row of inner hair cell and 2 rows of outer hair cell. And in a normal ear, if you look at the spacement, you can see this nerve ending, there's a hair cell here, this dark line here, that's electron EM plus here. Then after damage, you can see this is the hair cell remaining, there's no hair cell. This is the base, this is high frequency, gradual low frequency. Damage can come through congenitally inherited genetic disease, or an antibiotic we talk about, or huge exposure, prolonged exposure to noise, all of them, okay? Now, however, so here's a closer view for you to see the damage. So this will be 1 row of hair cell normally. You can see the hair cell is gone. Okay, and here's a damage to outer hair cells. So in this case, it's not entirely gone. So you can still see some of them. Okay, now in some cases, entirely gone. So this is expanded view of a cochlear. So these are the nerve endings, outer nerve. The hair cell would be along this range. And you can see there's still hair cell here, but there's no more hair cell at all. The reason cochlear implant can work is that the nerve, luckily, the nerve ending is still good. So idea here now is to electrically stimulate this remaining fiber. So if you drop an electrode here, if you activate fibers, then you can generate action potentials, then you get a hearing. That's the whole idea. Okay. Now what are the challenges? And this now we show you the cochlear and the hair cells and ganglion cells, so forth, so on. Okay. Now the challenge is the following. Okay. This is easier said than done. The concept of electrically activating nerve ending isn't earth-shaking, it is by now. The challenge is the following. So if we show you here, this is like 3D view with cross-section of a cochlear. Remember, cochlear is spinal condition, like here. Electrically insert from here, you can go through various places, and these are various exposure points. So electrode now, commercial available electrodes now, is about 22, 24 channels. In a few minutes, we'll talk about why you don't have only 50 channels. Do you remember we discussed earlier, in normal ear, in humans, how many outer nerve fibers that are lying up here? What's the number of outer nerve fibers? Anyone remember? In what's order? It's not 20, it's not 200. What's the number? Anyone remember? In what order? How many optic nerve fibers that innervate the human cochlear? Anyone remember? Just in the ballpark. 100, 1,000, a million? Not a million, somewhere. Do you remember any? You guys gotta remember it. Maybe I spit too much. It's about 30,000. In cats actually has a 50,000. So we have normally, in humans, we have about 30,000, 30 to 40,000 optic nerve fibers. That means, like here. So if I show you here, if you count how many fibers, all the way across cochlea, we have 30,000 fibers. Now here's challenging. Now engineers only have about 22 to 24 electrode spot there. How could I make it work? In fact, when people introduced this idea half a century ago, no one thought it would work. If you are a good student of SBE II until now, you will say it does not work. Because everything we told you so far, we told you it should not work. Because you have a cochlear is so elegant with 30,000 fiber here. Here comes the engineers, put a couple wires, say, I give you hearing. Okay. In fact, that was a joke for a long time. Scientists thought engineers are crazy. You can never get it work. You can never hear anything. Okay. Because we don't have a few of them. But then why can't the engineer put 30,000 of them? Well, you can't. One of them is pretty expensive. Each channel will cost several $1,000s. You'll make this like a million Ferrari cars worth of cochlear implant no one has ever used. But that's actually not the most important reason. The reason being that inside here is what you learn. It's wet. It's a fluid. We talk about, right? So engineers, you think you put all the electrode contact here, you turn them on. What happened? This is just like some of you did in the frog nerve experiment. Your nerve was wet. Everything short circuits. So there's a lot of interference between electrodes. That was a major problem. So if you put too many, put everyone here, they interfere with each other. It does you no good. In fact, it does worse. So there are several problems. And one of the surgical problems is that when you insert this, how do you avoid damaging remaining cochlear, especially nerve? Right? Because nerve ending here, if you poke through here, you damage the nerve. Then it doesn't even no good. Second, how do you stimulate fiber in the tip of here? This is still the problem where the electrode won't reach. Remember, the cochlear, we say it's a spinal thing, and the smaller in the top. So when the surgeons insert it from the base, it's big. You can keep pushing it, it just go, somewhere stop. So that's a major question still exists. None of the commercial electrode can reach to the apex. What's the apex in the top? That's a low frequency. What's the low frequency for? For voice, for music. Okay. So this is the point that I just give you now that we'll end up, we'll have a list. So this is an opening problem. But nevertheless, surgeons have been able to insert this into most of a cochlear reasonably successfully, and engineers have delivered electrode pulses into those contacts. Okay, so here's another way to show you. This is how it goes. So you have this cochlear, which is tone-type organized from high frequency here to low frequency here. We take signals like a vowel, like speech, like music, that's broadband. We band pass them into a number of band passes, let's say 22 channels. Each channel, we do the Haber transform. We take out the envelope. This is all in your signal processing. We use that envelope to create pulses. We use that pulses to drive current. Therefore, each electrode here will deliver a pulse current, channel by channel. Okay. One of the things this does very well is match the frequency. So we know when you have a high voice, high frequency voice, will deliver somewhere here, whereas a low frequency voice will deliver somewhere here. Except up to this range now, where we talk about voice, pitch, other things, electrode doesn't touch. That's the issue. Okay. So here is a video I put on the link. Maybe your PDF doesn't do it. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip it. Let's just show you a demo to show you when the sound comes here, the vibration in the cochlear. It's a nice video. I'll send out the web link. So let's continue to look for discuss the issues. Issue of here of the cochlear implant here. This is electrode contact we talk about, and each of them generates a current. Okay, and apex is low frequency, you cannot reach. So the issue of how you code the sound here is really reduced to how you encode a wideband signal with bandpass signal. Okay, and we already talked about that you cannot insert this all the way. So the most apical part cannot be inserted. And if you ever work on this as an engineer and a physician in your career, this is a problem going to be solved in the next 10, 20 years. Now, in some manufacturers are trying to make a very thin electrode that can go through here, but it's not easy because when we do the surgery, surgeons really push it through, and the spinal cord, cochlear is spiral, right? So it's getting harder and harder when we push, and they don't want to push it so hard to damage it. So that's problem still remaining, has been remaining for 20 years, probably for another 10, 20 years until people find another surgical approach to solve this. And the second is, we mentioned it briefly already, the electrodes are embedded in a very conductive fluid chamber, and therefore interaction between electrodes is huge. This is one major reason engineers cannot put too many electrodes there, even though manufacturally you can probably put 200 electrodes there now. Not 20 years ago, but now you can put it there. But no one does this because it doesn't no good, because the current spread here. Okay, so now let's take a look on what is being stimulated in the nerve ending and what are the signal you try to stimulate. So here is a spectrum showing you speech, the word of basketball, music, or ghost honk. Okay. Now what you can see here is that here's a challenging. That speech are complex patterns, music that is time varying. Okay. This is something you can analyze. If we take out one word, like this sentence, one sentence, 5 women play basketball. It's like this. We can expand it here, we say they here, because there's a lot of vowel here. And this is what I showed you earlier. If you take the signal, those are Fourier transform. You have this spectrum that's discrete, of course, it's because of periodic. Then you have this F1 through F2, F3. That's called formats. So in speech, we know that these are most important things, F1 through F3, as well as F0, which is pitch. So when engineers started doing cochlear implant half a century ago, 30 years ago, if we were to put you in a position, say, design me a signal processing strategy to convert this into the brain, what are you going to do? You're going to do what this show you. You say, well, these are important, and this important, and we extract it from speech, drop it in the electrode, and stimulate the ear. This is what engineers do. The first version of a cochlear implant, which doesn't work, which is not being used. I want to mention this so you see how the interplay between science and engineering back and forth. Okay, and this is what the people did. They say, we code here, we code format frequency because that's crucial for understanding speech. Okay, if ask every speech scientist what you should code, they will tell you code this first. Next thing you code is F0. My handout, there was a mistake here. It should be F0 instead of F3. So then this is what engineer design. I code F0, code F1, 2, 3, then I pass them through here. And as a rest signal, I code the general spectrum. Does not work. Doesn't work. And you code this to stimulate ear, people just don't hear. And people give this up. Then people went on. User methods now in retrospect looks very cruel. Okay, what they did what we all know now today is bandpass filter filtering. So say forget its features. We just take a song, we bandpass them into several channels. This is the earlier one. You only have 4 channels. This is the bandwidth, but now you have up to 22 channels. You take up 20 channels. But if you do this experiment, I mean, maybe next year we should give this to you as a homework. You can do a simulation. You take speech sound, you get a bandpass signal. What do you got from each channel? What do you got from each channel? It's a bandpass signal with carrier and envelope, right? There's a very fast changing signal and a slow changing, something like this. But the carrier goes too fast. Electricity cannot keep up with it. And remember, we talked about phase locking earlier. Phase locking only goes to, kilohertz. And also in speech analysis, people realize that one way to recover speech, this is a major subject we didn't cover, is that if we're going to ask you to recover speech from this bandpass signal, all you need is envelope. Okay, this is exactly the term envelope you learn from signal processing. So if you extract envelope, in fact, people have shown that if you extract envelope here, replace the carrier by noise, you can still hear the speech. So that proves that envelope is important. So envelope is extracted, compressed, and that's the signal to drive electrode. So that's how it's working now. Now, this again, actually you don't actually expect this from speech analysis, because speech people tell you by doing so, you screw up major thing in speech. Okay, but this is how it works. That's one trick. Second trick, this gets to the nerve now. So once you done this bandpass filtering, you take out the envelope, this rectification essentially extract envelope. Then you stimulate every nerve here, and people cannot hear a thing. People just can't hear, up to the point. Then in about the 1980s, there's someone by name Blake Wilson. He's a professor in Duke University now, he's an engineer. He come up with methods that completely revolutionary cochlear implant. In fact, saves the cochlear implant. Otherwise, cochlear implant will be dead. We're not going to give you a lecture today. So back then, until his work, everything was fine. Everything we use today is up to this point. Okay, bandpass signal, envelope out, current stimulating, except people just cannot hear. Then he realized, by being an auditory physiologist, that if you have this many channels, back then, only about half a dozen channels, you stimulate auditory nerve, every nerve will become activated. They become interfering with each other. Plus, there's a property we didn't talk about. If auditory nerve is here, stimulate side, there's inhibition, suppression. Then he come up with this method we now call continuous interleaf sampling. That one is shown here. He stimulated each of them with slight time difference, 30 milliseconds. He introduced a 30 millisecond delay between electrode. Okay, so that you don't stimulate the ear simultaneously, but with a time lag. That was key. He had a paper in Nature, probably the best way he done his life, and that suddenly increased the performance of people's understanding of speech for 10% to 80%. It was like day and night. Okay, he was visiting here a couple years ago. He owned, among the three people, three developers of a cochlear implant, including him and two other people, got the Lasker Award in medicine. You all know Lasker Award is, people say, pre-Nobel. Okay, a lot of people believe the development of a cochlear implant should have won Nobel Prize one day, if not already. He should have deserved it. So here's one, his contribution as an engineer and a physiologist is this 30 millisecond. Completely changed. It is amazing. And another thing he did is also amazing is that this is time before cochlear implant was approved by FDA as a clinical device given to broad community. And his work was supported by NIH. He applied the patent and released the patent to the general public. So every company can start using that patent to make a device. Now, this is remarkable because he and the Duke University could have earned a lot of money. If I have a patent, they give it to one company, that company will dominate the industry. But then, the reason they did it this is so remarkable, is that if they did that, then cochlear implant as a field would not take off. Because if only one company make it, charge a lot of money, very few people use it, you don't get implant. So apply a patent, make it public. Suddenly, about 2-3 companies start making this, and then merely in a time of 2 decades, cochlear implant becomes standard device that a physician can give to the patients. So there's a very interesting story behind this. That's design. Now, how does cochlear implant work in the individuals? So these are several strategies that people compare. You can see this is a percentage crack. 0 means you hear nothing. 100%, 90% means you can have a phone conversation with cochlear implant. And you can see there's still a lot of the variability. Some people do very well, some people do not very well. Okay. Now, here is the video. I'm going to save time, leave this to you to watch. It's pretty interesting. YouTube video explain in more graphically term how the cochlear implant work, but most idea we cover. Now, but still, the processing for speech, it's not perfect. So the cochlear implant processing of speech, there's still lack of frequency information. Now, I'm going to bring you back now to what it doesn't work. So if you take a speech, it's envelope, okay? The original spectral temporal pattern of speech is like this. We say today is Friday. If you take this, you will see this change in frequency. But once you bypass this signal, okay, here what you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see the band. And use the methods we just discussed. You take each band envelope, you plot here, this is what you got. Okay, so what you got here isn't really real speech in here. And this is one reason earlier people thought they shouldn't work, because if you take a speech, reduced to here, and a lot of information is gone. And it is true, a lot of information gone. But why people can't understand this? This goes back then to the neuroscience, right? From engineer back to neuroscience. The reason this work was because that term we discussed last Friday, plasticity. Okay, last Wednesday, when I discussed somatosensory system, I discussed a phenomenon of phantom limb. Someone lost the limb here, feel itch. And if you touch here, they say, yeah, I feel my limb. That plasticity in the brain, when this is gone, it's take over. That phenomenon called plasticity is essentially what makes this work. Because in the human ear, we have 30,000 channels to replicate this form. That's how our normal hearing people's brain work. In a cochlear implant, you replace by 20-some channel. Mathematically, physiologically should not work. The reason it works is that brain now, with only 22 channels, or 15 or 6 initially, brain takes time to learn and eventually interpret CP out of that due to plasticity. Okay. So what makes it work is really in the brain, is brain's plasticity. Okay. And, but plasticity still doesn't do any help when you cannot excite the apex part with low frequency. And this is what I will talk about. Now, another challenge here is the following, is that cochlear implant frequency relation is very low, because we have 30,000 fiber in normal ear, whereas you have about 22 channels. So here show you, this is a channel number from 1 to 12 in a commercial device now. And here is the frequency it corresponds to. Okay, each channel, they divided. But you can see there's large gaps of frequency. So frequency relation is not very good. So if you ask cochlear implant patients to tell the subtleties between two speakers, he or she might have great difficulties on what we do. So what is the kind of understanding now? So general meaning of a sentence, but not the subtleties. Okay. Now another reason is the following. So if you look at the speech perception in CI users for the monosyllable words, this is a tougher task. If you give them a sentence, today is Friday, because of their context, they can't figure out. You say, Friday, what is this? Ask them. There are two motivations. So this one monosyllable word is difficult. So what you can see here, this is in children. 1 month after cochlear implant, this is a range, this is a mean. It's about 38%, 37%. As time goes by, about 2 years old, children usually do better than adults with cochlear implant because of plasticity. Their brain is more plastic. They do about 60%, but still it's here. There's as good as normal people, 90, 100%, as poor as deaf, 10%. Now, this is challenging. I'm going to spend the rest of the time to tell you what else you could do as an engineer and a physiologist now to understand it. Why is this a challenge? Because each of the dots represents one person who receives identical device and using identical surgical procedures. So surgeons put in using same device, same procedures, and you get a whole range of performance. Well, how do you explain this? Well, people now believe in order to explain here. I mean, engineers have done work on this process for 30 years now. They've done everything they can to fine-tune this. But it's still, in the patients, you have this wide range of preference. People think maybe this is because how the brain interprets. Because the information feeding here is imperfect. So we have to understand how the brain to to process. But how does the brain process it? Now you've learned this from this class. So if this is the cochlear, if this is deaf, it's no here so. When you electrode here, a active action potential. As we've discussed by now in my lectures, action potential travel from here through all the way to here. Okay, this is what. Now, in the past, people have done experiment, like drop an electrode here and it turns on and figure out what's going on. So one way to understand that variability is to study the brain at various structure in the auditory system and turn cochlear implant on and see what is there, what is not there. So in the past, people have done this. They drop your electrode here in the animal experiment now, when animal was deafened. But the problem is that once you're deafened here, you have no idea what the neurons are. Okay, as we'll talk about earlier. So one experiment we did recently is the following. We take animal, we deafen 1 year using antibiotic that used to use in humans but banned now. So it's deaf. Then we implant electrode here, and we can stimulate. And then the other ear we leave it open. Now, most of the neurons in the brain are bilateral. That means they take input from either ear. Since we have an open ear, so we got an electrode here, it turns on, figure out what does it respond to. Then we immediately go to this side, turn this on, so what it respond to, and what we find is really surprising. So this experiment, 1 year is electrical stimulation with cochlear implant, another is sound. This was done by graduate student who used to be TA in this class. Now here's what we found out. You have enough knowledge to understand the part now. This is from a recent study. That is, this both here, the color represents the frequency map. The higher frequency is red, the lower frequency is blue. The black spot indicates the neurons that has no response. So when we turn on a sound from 1 ear, you see most of the neurons respond. Few of them doesn't respond. But here's the surprise. When we turn on electric stimulation, most data black. So when we first observe this, so there are many hundred neurons here. Okay, when we first saw this, it was shocking because you would not expect if anyone asks you drop your electrode in ear, right? Turn on as you know you can turn current to the mount as safe to ear. Would you excite the neuron? Everyone would say yes, because the electrical stimulation is very strong. But it turns out many neurons, this is ipsilateral, that means the same side of ear, could not be turned on. This was coming as a huge surprise. And then you can see the ones you can turn on, the frequency of the neuron either driven by sound, by electrical stimulation, match. So this is tonality. But there are many neurons here cannot be turned on. How many of them? Well, with acoustics, you can drive 75% of neurons in the brain. The rest of 25% of neurons, ones we discussed earlier, that are highly nonlinear, that are harmonic neurons, pitch neurons, are hard to drive. But when we turn on electrical stimulation, on the same side, 12%, other side, 50%. That means, this is when I show the physician, it means that in the hospital here now, today or tomorrow, someone get a cochlear implant, they turn on, physician will assume it does something. Well, what I can tell you is that this side of the brain to the ear, most neurons don't respond to this at all. So yes, cochlear implant allow you to hear, but there are a lot of things you cannot hear. So what are the things you cannot drive them? It turns out to be this kind of neurons. So this is a neuron we call a V-shaped neuron. This is a receiver field tuning curve you've seen multiple times now, frequency, sound level. If you drive this neuron by acoustic response sound, it's frequency tuning, you will know this. If we drive this neuron by cochlear implant, this is electrical position that corresponds to frequency, this current level, you can turn on. Okay? The ones that were black spot are this type of neurons. This type of neurons that you might have to remember from my previous lecture, that's highly selective to frequency sound level. This type of neuron, it turns nothing. This is that black spot. Okay. This work just published 2 years ago. Work was done 7 years ago by graduate students. This is the first time in literature we know one particular type of neuron, at least this is in the monkey brain, we assume it's very similar to humans. This type of neuron, cochlear implant does not activate this. Now, there's a long story. I won't have time to explain why this neuron a big deal. Well, it turns out that these are the neurons are likely responsible for our fine hearing. We hear subtleties in music. We hear sound in a noise. We hear subtleties between two voices are likely encoded by this type of neuron. And this type of neuron are powerful for general sound. Therefore, by not being able to drive this neuron, cochlear implant cannot let people hear those subtleties in sound, which is consistent with the clinic. The reason you cannot excite the neuron like this one is not because there was not enough current. There is enough current. Okay, that's because of inhibition. These type of neurons have a lot of inhibition at high sound level. So cochlear implant has too strong current. That's key. This is what we learn. Okay, so what makes cochlear implant less effective in driving auditory cortex is because of this. Let me just show this picture. Okay, this is a take-home message. So if our normal human ear is piano keyboard, when we listen, it's like a musician plays the keyboard one at a time. Okay, what does cochlear implant do? You take a hammer, you are bang on this. Okay, that's essentially what a cochlear implant do. And this hammer, when you hammer several keys together, it generates too much oscillation. Now, the Matt Wilson, Blake Wilson discovered, delay this. Say, oh, why can't we make smaller hammer? Yeah, people have been trying to make smaller hammer. Smaller hammer would be equivalent to finer electrode. But electrode, the current split is very big, and within the cochlear is wet conductive fluid. So people have not been able to make this hammer as finer as one piano keyboard. People say, what methods do this? One can say, well, I have two hammers, we hammer about the same time, but slight difference. The pattern of two hammers may produce something finer than one hammer. That's called current steering. People are working on that now. So these are the hint from electrophysiology. And so physiology suggests us there is major deficit in cortical process of cochlear implant, and those are the details that people are working on. So here are some factors for you to think about. Since this is my last lecture, I want to throw the question here for you to think about in connection with all the basic auditory system knowledge you've learned. Okay. The implant, as we said, cannot be inserted all the way to the cochlear. This means the low frequency cannot be connected to low frequency auditory nerve. That means pitch and music, we have a lot of issue with this. Think about this. And cochlear implant typically have fewer than 8 functional channels. Although they may have as many 22 channels, but most time actually you don't need the 22 channel, sadly. And the normal humans have 30,000 auditory nerve fibers. So how do you make this? Approach this. Okay. A big difficulty in cochlear implant design is electrode insertion. We talk about, and this concern how do you activate fiber normally. So there's a lot of work to be done in the nanotechnology domain to make the fiber more make the electrode more effective in stimulation. Plasticity in the central auditory system is essential. This is the key. If one were to summarize the success of a cochlear implant, it's really successful. Essentially, is two things. One is engineering design to turn signal in the bandpass signal and introduce a 30 millisecond delay. That's it, most important. Secondly, on neuroscience is plasticity. Thank God, brain is plastic. If a brain is not plastic, cochlear implant should not work. Okay, and it takes 1-2 years truly to learn for people to learn cochlear implant. Okay, and implant only work with speech if a subject has adequate language. So I sort of stated many things about the cochlear implant, but cochlear implant really work very well if people have some prelingual experience. If you never heard speech before, you're born deaf to begin with, it takes a long time for you to acquire. Okay, so in many situations, like background noise, cochlear implant really doesn't work. This is a situation where we really need to have cochlear implant in 2 years. So everything about cochlear implant so far you hear, you read, is in clinical is about 1 year. Okay, and you have learned enough there now. You know, 2 years help us to determine sound. Then you say, why can't we put 2 cochlear implant if cost is not issue? Why? Why can't people implant 2 cochlear implant in 2 years They can do this tomorrow in every hospital. Why? Why that has been done? That's my question before falling to sleep. Why? Think about this. Why, if suppose the cost is not an issue, you get a 2 free cock implant. Why people haven't put a 2 cock implant, 1 each year? Anyone want to offer? Okay. Think about this. This is a very interesting question that you could have. Now, frontier of a cock implant is the following: music, binaural hearing, and other things. Okay, and I will let you to read it here, and I think you should understand the reason behind all of this, given what you listen. And unsolved problem, we already talked about noise is issue and the other things. But there's one thing that I want to tie before I let you go. I want to tie you back to what I discussed last week. Is the following. So this thing I will let you read. Is this plots? Remember we discussed the feedback processing last Friday. Why people sing out of a tune? Why if you block ear you begin sound very wild? Okay. Think about the cock implant now. Now this is the same diagram. I inserted one thing here. When we speak, our sound coming into ear. Now imagine situation for someone wear a cock implant. I put a cock implant, so you don't have normal ear. You have a cock implant, which only have a 22 channel. But everyone talking to about what you hear is not exactly what you said, right? Correct? Because what you produce here with 22 channel, with bandpass filter, you're not going to hear exactly. So what is the consequence of that? So how could a cock implant people speak normally? They don't. My final story to you is that the reason I started working on this, I was auditory physiologist for many years. It's about 15 years ago, I was visiting a cochlear implant rehabilitation in China, in the suburb of Beijing, where Beijing government pays for every children cochlear implant with one condition. After you implant, parents have to put them in a school for rehabilitation to make sure you can use it. I was visiting there with senior scientists, and they teach about in the kids. You know, in China, the customers, when kids say older, I was older than kids, they will call you uncle, right? Just the name, say uncle. Say teacher brought the kids and say, hey kid, this is Uncle Wang. Kids say, Uncle Wang. I was sitting there and say, this does not sound right. And we all know when people are deaf, their vocal production is absolutely normal. There's nothing wrong with this. But they speak this in a expression with big tongue. It's Uncle Wang, how are you? That moment, we just finished this study I talked to you about with the feedback. That moment I realized the kids with the cock implant could not speak proper Mandarin Chinese because he does not hear himself very well. Because of this, suddenly I got a link that this feedback process we do has everything to do with the cock implant. And we began to work on cock implant when I come back. And this is still problem has not been solved. How do you deliver sound to the cochlear implant patients who, by definition, cannot hear perfectly? Therefore, by this diagram, this arrow is always greater than 0, right? We say that if you hear perfectly, then you don't have to change anything. This is 0. But if you put a cochlear implant here, you will never hear perfectly. So this is always greater than 0. So how do you guide your vocal production? There's a lot of interesting science and engineering can be done here. And finally, I want to also share with you this kind of work. We talk about auditory physiology, talk about cock implant. This will involve engineers, physicians, and industry. Okay, just give you an example. The work I talked about, the last part was done in my lab by a graduate student, one of you, down the road. And it was a collaboration with a physician scientist, with the engineer, with the industry. That's what we were able to do that work. And the student who did this, I really want to give his name. His name is Luke Johnson. He was a TA here a couple years ago. Now he's a professor in Minnesota. And the work he did that showing that half of the brain does not respond to cochlear implant is a landmark work that has a profound implication for engineers and physicians to improve the cochlear implant. So this is one reason, no matter what you want to do, learning basic physiology of the brain and having engineering skill as a biomedical engineer is extremely powerful. Everything I talk about today and above, you could do it if you wish down the road. So my time is out, so I'll stop here. And we'll have 2 more lectures, and the final exam is in about 10 days. And some more questions asked you, since you guys didn't answer, maybe I'll leave them to exams. So thank you, and enjoy your summer.